Okay, so welcome to the NZ Everyday Investor. I'm your host, Darcy Angaro, and I'm joined in the studio by James Fuller.
Hi, Darcy.
Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yeah,
you don't probably get that much, do you?
No
Is
one's
that how
ever
you
said
pronounce
that.
your name?
It's of German descent, so I think it would be like Fuller if my sort of grandparents are German. But no, just Fuller
Right.
is.
So James, you're here to talk to me about a few points, and just so the listeners know who you are, how you fit into the world of investing or business, growing wealth, which is what the show is about. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I suppose my background for many years, I was a technology consultant. I then became a startup coach, and more recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, I co-founded a startup called Hnry that takes the pain and hassle out of being a freelancer or contractor and helps people take advantage of the emerging gig economy, you could call it, to kind of get into that line of work without having to take on any of the tax or hassle that comes along with it.
Okay, I want to talk more about that later on as well, because I think what you guys are doing there really solves a problem for a lot of people, myself included, and that warrants further investigation, I think. That's going to be interesting.
Great.
We've got a few points that we're going to cover off, and I reached out to you largely. Actually, the reason why I reached out to you was it's been something that I'd want to cover on the show for a while, but I had a client who actually came to me and he said, "Hey, what do you think about this Hnry thing? You know, and is this a good idea?"
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I knew about it loosely because you're part of the fintech accelerator from Kiwi.
That's right. Yep. Yep.
And then I looked into it a little bit more, and I thought, yeah, well, this kind of makes sense. I get it, and answered a few of his questions around that, and then I thought, well, yeah, this is actually kind of relevant for a lot of our listeners who are in business, who probably struggle with a lot of these administrative things just because they're a contractor, they're self-employed, they go from gig to gig. That's an issue, but they're missing out on stuff because of that. They're actually financially excluded.
Totally.
As a result of that. And so I thought, well, yeah, that makes sense. And I think there's probably a bigger discussion around that. And then when I looked into a little bit more about what your background was, I thought, well, there's probably quite a few discussion points that we could.
Yeah, it's huge. I tend to talk a lot, so you're going to need to stop me if I go too far. Just raise your hand and I will be quiet.
I'll just interrupt you. Don't worry. So the future of work. Let's talk about that first. The future is actually already here. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the conversations that I have quite a lot with people. We tend to be using this buzzword of future of work a lot, and a lot of the times it's about dispelling that myth. It's not something that's far off in the future or something that we're looking ahead to. It's something that is actually already here. We're already living in an on-demand economy where people are earning money independently through short-term gigs or contracts, and that's nothing new. That's been happening for many, many years. We're just talking about it a lot more because I think technology to a certain part is playing a role in opening that up to a large number of people.
Right. So technology kind of seeps into existing structures and creates more efficiencies, removes barriers. And that's kind of what has been happening over the last
that's
few years.
right. I mean, a lot of times, when we talk about the future of work, it tends to blend in with conversations about things like the gig economy, which leads people to think about things like Uber or Airbnb, these kind of tech platforms that enable the gig economy. And then we start thinking about, what does the future of work look like when it comes to automation? But actually, even that is nothing new. I think we've coined this phrase future of work a little bit because we're not quite sure how to digest all of this information. So it feels easier just to compartmentalize it and say, well, that's a future thing. Let's plan for it, as opposed to it's here, let's embrace it.
Right. And I guess that's probably, to a certain extent, that's a bit of a coping mechanism because
Yeah.
for a lot of people, a lot of change just freaks the hell out of them. Right?
It's
pretty scary.
huge. I mean, I always think about the kind of change that we've seen historically many, many years ago, and you look with the sort of advent of the motor vehicle, you don't see many blacksmiths around these days, but we cope. Everyone kind of adapts to different technological change. We're just very good these days at putting labels on things and sort of pushing them away from ourselves and saying, well, I don't have to think about that because that's the future of work. Whereas actually, I mean, for us, it's a super exciting thing that people can earn flexibly and under their own steam and kind of follow their own path in a way that they've never been able to before.
Gotcha. And have you been self-employed for pretty much most of your life?
For quite a lot of my recent career before starting Hnry, I was self-employed. I was a contractor doing a number of different roles, and it's interesting. It's a world where when you first start out, it can appear quite scary. People talk about sort of having lumpy income because you're a contractor. Yeah. But one thing I learned was actually, people who contract or freelance, they're no different from anybody else, but for some reason they're kind of burdened by a whole lot of financial admin hassle that comes along with it.
That's right, and anxiety.
And anxiety,
around their
and that
lumpy
thing,
income.
and that's I faced that myself. I made some mistakes in the early days. I mean, for instance, one of the classic mistakes to make is registering yourself as a business when you don't need to.
That's right.
And I literally,
or being GST registered when you don't need to.
Yeah, and I
all that stuff.
literally doubled my my admin burden overnight by unnecessarily registering a business. And this is the problem: is that there's a lack of education as to what
Correct.
is required to trade independently.
That's
and,
right.
And I made a wrong choice and then had to unwind myself from
That's
it.
right. It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I know that a lot of people that I deal with who are newly self-employed, that's the very first thing they do. They go out and they register a limited liability company, and then they get GST registered, and they believe that that's actually what it means to start a business.
But it's always interesting that I ask people, because we have this conversation a lot, and you say, well, what is it about the registered business that you believe you need? And the things that people primarily actually want, they want a trading name, they want an email address, they maybe want a separate bank account.
Right.
And all of those things are perfectly achievable as a sole trader.
That's right.
The registered business, I always draw the distinction, which is, if you are going to be employing staff on a full-time basis, or you're going to have stock inventory, you're going to have significant amounts of creditors, that is a registered business. If you are an individual trading as yourself, potentially hiring some subcontractors to do some work, there is no need to register a business. It's just overkill.
Correct. It's all about starting a business, not starting a company.
Yeah, and we have this misconception that everyone who is self-employed is a small business. And we have this conversation with government and with the banks a lot, because they sort of, again, compartmentalize people and say, well, you're not a registered business, but you are a small business. And we talk to our customers and they say, well, I'm a midwife, I'm a tattoo artist, I'm not running a business. I just happen to be earning under a different set of circumstances than a permanent member of staff.
Which is really interesting, isn't it? Because what you're kind of talking about is an anxiety that a huge chunk of the population have around how they derive an income. Let's define gig economy first, and then talk about it. So tell me, what's the best definition? Maybe it's a misnomer. What would you prefer to sort of define it as?
Well, I think the gig economy is at its heart is about taking on work from multiple concurrent people, and it's short-term flexible contracts.
Okay.
But it does have a kind of unfortunate connotation into sort of technology and technology platforms. Yeah. So I think I always prefer to talk about people who are independent earners. They're people who earn outside of a salary permanent job.
Independent earners. It actually makes a lot more sense. It describes what it is.
It's hard though, right? Because it's not a concept that exists for people, because a lot of people are just defined by the job that they do. If I said to you, Darcy, are you an independent earner? You're not. You might be self-employed. You might call yourself an independent consultant.
I'm an independent breather.
You're an independent breather.
The trend then of independent earning, is that increasing?
It absolutely is. Absolutely. If we look at the different ways that people can earn independently, everything from freelance work to driving an Uber to Airbnb or sort of even just picking up side hustle work alongside your permanent job, the rate that people are starting to diversify their careers and to look for different avenues to earn an income is absolutely increasing, not just in New Zealand but worldwide.
Interesting. And do you think that, we look at these tech companies that are moving in and stealing our jobs? I sound like somebody somebody in Donald Trump town. But I guess I'm thinking, well, technology like Google, Uber, Airbnb, they come in, they're displacing some of the workforce and some of the existing business structures that are already the incumbent players. What does that really mean? Like, obviously there's more revenue going there, perhaps they're paying less tax, but people are potentially losing their jobs, but other people are getting new jobs. So it's not necessarily bad, is it?
No,
it's just different.
It's different, and it's that evolutionary thing, which is actually over time certain jobs become less relevant as technology steps into play. And I think one of the things that people do talk about Uber, and I won't talk about how they treat their drivers, but if we talk about those sorts of apps that are allowing people to take advantage of, like ride sharing, for instance, you might talk about Lyft. Yeah. Those sorts of things are actually opening up the opportunity for people to earn income who previously would not have done. So what we're seeing is trends where people are working as a freelancer during the day, and then in the evening for extra money they drive an Uber. And they would never have, you couldn't imagine being a freelancer 10, 15 years ago and in the evening going and joining a taxi company
No, that's right.
And like branding your car with the livery of a taxi company, it just wouldn't happen. Whereas today you've got that on-demand economy. You can dip into various different roles to spread where you earn your income from.
Right. So that independent earning thing kind of takes another meaning. You could even be a salaried employee.
Oh,
and still
a lot of
doesn't
people
matter.
are, and a lot of people that use our service are earning on the side of a permanent job, and usually it's a sort of, it's something that happens over time. I think everyone who's been a contractor or a freelancer probably fell into it, just like I did. You know,
Right.
I went to try and go for a role that was at one of the banks, and it turned out it was a contract role, and I didn't know anything about it, but I took a chance and I went for it.
Sure.
And I didn't plan to become a contractor or a freelancer, and I think people always find they fall into it a little bit.
Yeah.
And when you've got an economy that is so diverse, people are taking those chances, and they're saying, actually, I don't want to just earn in one particular place. I do want to kind of have the opportunity in multiple different places to earn a crust.
And from both sides, from the worker and the employer, for lack of a better term, I use my air quotes quite liberally. You can only see this if you're watching the video. I'm guessing there's a sense of efficiency here, right? Like you're only getting paid when you're on task.
Yeah.
The employer is only having to pay for something when it's actually being worked on.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a really interesting shift. It's a mindset shift for employers who traditionally, where there are roles to fill and jobs that need to be done, traditionally a lot of people will look to solve that by hiring someone on a full-time basis. And effectively what they might be doing there is solving either a short or medium-term problem with kind of a long-term solution. They're essentially saying, I need a permanent employee because I have a certain resource gap right now.
Correct.
Whereas actually with a more contingent workforce, you can manage the demands as things flux up and down. You look at project work and you say, actually, this is perfectly suited for a more on-demand workforce who, what we're finding, people don't want to stay in the same job for 30 years anymore. They want to move around because that helps them gain more experience.
I can totally attest to this. Last year, we hired another full-time staff member, and I really, when I reflect back on this, there's probably only maybe, 30 to 40% of what I was giving her to do was actually going to generate meaningful return for the business. Probably 60% of the time, I knew that there was probably no value that she would be adding. No offense to her if she's listening, but this is probably just quite common with a lot of small businesses or any businesses really. A lot of inefficiency hides inside the organization because a lot of the time people are just idle. And if you could somehow just figure out, well, what is the exact job that you need to get done? Who's the very best person to do this job, and just fill that gap. But that does make a lot of sense, and technology helps there, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the technology side is really useful, particularly when you think about, let's think about some sort of enterprises in New Zealand. That at the moment, a lot of enterprises, when hiring, will specifically look for local resource. But we've come so far from a technology perspective that we're living in a global economy where actually perhaps the best person to achieve this outcome for you doesn't live in New Zealand. Perhaps this person is, maybe it's a great example from one of our customers. It's a Kiwi who lives in Bali who works for US companies.
Wow.
These are people, this is what we call the kind of digital nomads. These are people who are living worldwide but still able to work from anywhere for anyone. And it's in unlocking that potential. New Zealand businesses should be taking advantage of the best people for the job that they can get from wherever they happen to live.
Yeah, good. So I'm thinking now in terms of financial exclusion, if this is something that is growing and if more and more people will be deriving income from independent means, then that doesn't actually fit with the current structure. They might not be able to have access to credit like somebody who's an employee will have. Do you see that this is going to require change from how independent earners, pitch themselves to the existing, lenders, etc.? Or what needs to give?
I think it's a two-sided coin, really. I think on the one hand, absolutely, I think independent earners need to get better at being able to demonstrate to financial services providers that they are a safe bet. Yeah. And I think we actively help our clients with this all the time, which is being able to package that stuff up and actually say, look, particularly because we pay everybody's taxes for them, it's very easy to go to a financial services provider and say this individual has no tax debt, they are fully paid up and they have consistent levels of income. But I also think the other side of that is changing the mindset of government and of banks to actually understand that just because you happen to earn independently, that doesn't mean you're any less of a safe bet than a permanent member of staff. I mean, permanent members of staff are only one reshuffle away from being made redundant. And I have friends who've been made redundant and are now out on the freelance market. And it's one of those things where if we change that mindset and understand that it's more about taking a macro lens over someone's current income and earning potential over time and their ability to be financially stable, that's far more important than they happen to have a permanent job and have 3 previous payslips.
Exactly. And I don't know really what the difference is in terms of risk. I would actually look at this and say it's probably less risky to take a punt on an independent earner with a little bit of track history to prove that they're obviously capable, competent to bring in an income. It's probably less of a punt than to take a punt on an employee sometimes, depending on the industry and the cycle that we're in. Redundancies happen, and they seem to be happening more frequently.
Well, there's very, very large organizations constantly going through that reshuffle cycle. And I think one of the things that we always see is that the independent earners who are out there, when they are able to package themselves in the right way, you're absolutely right. They are a very safe bet because in their entire world is about singing for their supper. They've got to go out and they've got to deliver every day of the week. They've got to think about client service. They've got to really impress in order to get that next job. I will hold my hand up and say when I was a permanent member of staff, there were days where I became complacent and I phoned it in. Whereas when I was a contractor,
you're in a safe place, James. It's okay.
This is a safe space. Am I all right to admit that? I won't say who I was working for at the time, but I phoned it in. I had my feet under the desk. I was quite happy to just kind of let things tick along. But as a contractor, I gave my all every single day.
Interesting.
Because I had to. Because the minute you take your foot off the boil or whatever,
the income stops.
The income stops, and you don't get that recommendation. You don't get, and in New Zealand is such a recommendation economy.
It's a very small environment.
You need people to say, hey, that guy is awesome, and he gives 110%.
Yeah. And I totally get that. Being self-employed myself, my entire career, I've never really been able to hide any of my incompetencies within my employer. And please forgive me, anybody who's on a PAYE salary. I don't mean to be taking a dig at you here. There's very competent people in this space, but I guess what we're trying to say is that it would be easy to still receive the same level of income, even if you're browsing on Facebook. As an employee, but when you're self-employed,
which I'm sure we've both done at some stage and been quite comfortable doing. I mean, certainly
but we pay for it.
Yes,
because we're losing income when we do it.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Whereas your employer is paying for it when you decide to do it when you're an employee.
Yeah,
it's not. It's just different.
I think an interesting point around that as well is how many times, as in my life, when I was a permanent member of staff, did I work unpaid overtime?
Yeah.
And that was quite a lot, particularly when I was working in London. Maybe what should have been an 8-hour day became an 11-hour day, maybe consistently. And if you imagine over the course of a year how much you're therefore underselling yourself, you're taking what is a set PAYE salary for a year, and that's based on you working 8-hour days. If you increase that by 10-15% every day, what's that doing to your overall worth to the company? Whereas as an independent earner, you're capped. You're told you can't work more than 8 hours a day, or a client has got a fixed price on your time. So your work-life balance suddenly improves dramatically because you cannot work outside the bounds of the hours that the client is paying for.
Right. Okay. So it's freeing in one sense, and in the other sense, when it comes to dealing with the current financial system, you are going to be excluded because, unfortunately, still mainstream lenders, will look at, have you got 2 years worth of financial statements?
I mean, asking a midwife for a balance sheet and a profit and loss is just madness, you know. And I think one of the things that, one of the reasons that we started Hnry back in the day was because people have traditionally been disadvantaged for being independent earners. And actually what we do is we flip it on its head and say, actually, now you're in the driving seat. You have the opportunity to go and work how you want, when you want, but you've got Hnry as a financial sidekick that takes care of all of the stuff that was the downside of being independent, including helping you get a leg up when it comes to financial services.
Good. Okay. Does it make a difference when it comes to getting a mortgage?
We've actually, we have. I mean, self-employed customers that we have, they come to us and we represent them as their tax agent. We represent them to the banks and we provide them with the right information that the banks need. And what we do is we package them so that we give the banks the same information they would have got from a PAYE permanent member of staff. So it's last 3 months pay information, it's future projections of earnings, as well as this person has no tax debt. And from a risk perspective, we're able to help our customers get pre-approval of loans and mortgages and those sorts of things. And for us, that's almost kind of the part of the fun of doing what we're doing, because it really enables people to get that leg up around financial planning that traditionally they've always found quite difficult.
Yeah, and I know anybody who is an independent earner and they have a friend who's an employee, and you just ask the simple question, who has KiwiSaver in the room? Everybody who has KiwiSaver, they're usually salaried employees, and unfortunately a lot of self-employed people have just not opted to get into it because they feel like there's no benefit.
No.
You know, there is $521 a year free money that they're missing out on.
Yeah.
But they feel that because there's not a 3% match going on, can't be bothered, right?
Yeah.
Sadly, what that does, and I've fallen victim to this myself, is you just don't participate with investing when you're self-employed.
No.
That's a serious, so on one side we've got this limitation around not being able to access credit very freely. And on the other side, we've got this tendency to just not access investing very freely as well.
True. Yeah.
So how do you guys deal with that? Do you work in the area of helping people kind of split off some of their income to do investments and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things we found was that people who are earning independently tend to find it very difficult to plan for the future. So the idea of financial planning is very difficult when you don't know what your today looks like, because you don't know how much you owe in income tax or ACC or GST. And so as part of our service, because we basically turn sort of independent earning into pay as you go and make sure everyone's always up to date on all their taxes, then people have the opportunity to plan for the future, because what we do is, provide people what they get paid is theirs to keep. And then we give them tools that allow them to segment their income off. Every time I get paid, I want to put 3% to KiwiSaver. I want to put 2% into my investment account. I want to put 1% onto paying off my credit card. And it's about making that easy for people to set up those little habits that allow them to save and invest and plan for the future that previously would have been kind of out of reach of a lot of people who didn't even know what their tax bill was.
Sure. So if I'm thinking about the midwife example, where the income, I'm guessing, depending on fertility rates in the region that you're working in.
I don't know. Are you paid per baby? I don't know how midwives get paid.
I'd love to know, actually. I'm pretty sure they get paid by baby, per baby, per weight.
More for twins? Is it
maybe
triplets?
You'd think so. It'd be
probably
as much work, right?
Okay.
Who knows?
Okay.
We'll find out.
I'll find out. I'll come back to you.
Yeah. So if you're a midwife and your income did fluctuate and you wanted to have a consistent tax plan and you wanted to contribute towards KiwiSaver, all that sort of stuff, but you also wanted to smooth out the valleys and the troughs in terms of cycles that you might have during your busy season, your quiet season. Is there help? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that we help people with, and one of the, we work a bit with the guys at sorted.co.nz, so Tom Hartman over at Sorted, he's a great guy, and we were talking to him the other week about how the recommendations have changed for independent earners over the years, because people used to say, well, put away 3 months salary for the rainy day or whatever, whereas actually the interesting thing now is we're saying, well, actually it's if you put away 2 months worth of committed expenses and actually have that in your in case of emergency fund, you can smooth those times where things like Christmas, where contractors or freelancers might not get so much work, there's no guaranteed income. And what we do on our platform is we provide tools for people to actually smooth that themselves, to choose a level of smoothing, to say, well, here's how I want to earn. And it's all of that kind of stuff that kind of gives power back to the individual and says, from a world previously where you kind of didn't feel like you had control, or you were relying on an elusive accountant to basically sit in the shadows and work things out, suddenly you're back in control. There's transparency, you know what you get, you know where your money goes, and you can plan, and then you can invest, and then you can grow your wealth.
And that's the thing, like getting access to credit and then getting access to investing are the two biggest things that I see as barriers, right? People are excluding themselves from it. And the number one reason is, well, it's really hard for me to know what my income is because it's I might go for 3 months. And I get that because I'm in the same space as well, variable income, all the rest of it. And I've got a lot of clients at the moment, in particular in the film industry, and this is quite a common thing where it's feast or famine, and the famine could be for a few months or longer. And the feast could be phenomenal. And you can tell that their financial decisions, when they're feeling on top of the world, are very bullish. It's very confident. Things are going well. I'm going to actually buy that bigger home, or I'm going to set aside a bit of money and I'm going to throw it into this. But then when there's a famine, it's the opposite. How can I cancel this, pull down on that, maybe even sell this just to get back on? So what you're effectively doing is you're kind of providing a help for those types of people who get carried away with the troughs and the valleys and the peaks and all the rest of it. You're providing a service for them to actually manage it. Some people can do it naturally, I guess. Some people might already be there. I know for me, it took me a while. But,
Absolutely.
you know, managing your money when you're self-employed is difficult.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because your focus shouldn't necessarily be on managing your money. Your focus should be on where's that next job coming from, you know, how can I grow my career,
That's
you know, my portfolio of skills, let's say. You know, if your focus is on that, you're not going to get the time to dedicate to financial planning, to financial well-being.
Correct.
And you know, we always tell people to take a bit of a macro lens over their earnings over time to almost get that smoothing effect. When if you say, okay, there's 3 months and it's feast or famine, but just take a step back and kind of zoom that out a little bit and say, well, over time, what do the trends tell me about my income? What do the trends tell me about how much I'm earning versus how much I'm spending, about my margins? And that's the kind of information that we surface to people in Hnry, is that actually they can see over time what that trend of earning pattern is and what that expenditure pattern is, so that they can start to take some of those decisions around, well, when are my quiet times and when are my busy times?
And it gives them confidence, isn't it?
And that's what it's about. It's about giving people confidence, where previously you mentioned anxiety, where, you know, this is a source of anxiety regardless of whether or not they have professional support. There is always an underlying level of anxiety when, you know, you don't have the transparency of where everything's going and what the moving parts are.
And it's like, you know, when it's raining outside, it's hard to imagine that it could ever be sunny. And when it's sunny, it's hard to imagine it can ever be raining.
Exactly.
You know, feast and famine. And I think having confidence when you're self-employed or an independent earner is really important, because you still need to make decisions. You still need to build wealth. You're still going to come to a point where you don't want to work anymore for money, and you're going to need to be able to draw down on something. And you might be missing out currently because you're not really engaging with stuff that you should be.
Yeah, and what I find fascinating is that actually we're finding that people who have not been in the workforce for a little while, whether it's people returning to work after having taken care of children or maybe elderly relatives, they're people who aren't in a position to return to work full time, now have this opportunity of stepping into independent earning as a way of
scaling
into it. And you know, even we're finding people who've retired, maybe they've worked for, you know, the best part of their life in a permanent job, they retire and they just want to keep their mind ticking over. They just want to earn that little bit of sort of extra money. They want to keep their mind fresh. And so we're seeing people work longer, but, you know, because of a certain sense of kind of ageism in the workforce, what they're doing is picking up independent earning. And saying, actually, this gives them an opportunity to feel a sense of value and be able to kind of stay connected with the workforce and not have to take on, you know, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day at a permanent role.
Yeah, because you go back in time 20 years ago and there wouldn't have been this option.
No.
Now there is.
And now there's a supreme amount of flexibility for people. And we always talk about the kind of different ways that people can work. And what we're seeing a lot of is services spring up specifically for people wanting to do flexible roles, people wanting to do
tell us about that, James, because I know of, you know, like I know of Fiverr, I know of Airbnb, I know of Uber. Tell me about, you know, the other kind of services available, like these startups that have kind of sprung up to help people interact with the gig economy or independent earning.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount. There's some that are just specifically for flexible working. So GetAFlex is great, which is GetAFlex, which is all about pairing organizations together with people who are looking for flexible work or very short term, maybe 2 or 3 days a week kind of work. There's even, I mean, some great platforms out there. EnrichMe is another one that we've worked with, and they provide an opportunity for kind of artists to kind of almost sort of sell courses online. And it's some really fantastic startups that are looking to really just enable people to take advantage of some of this sort of emerging independent earning economy. And so what we do as Hnry is sit underneath as that kind of financial wiring that says, look, it doesn't matter whether you're gig or contract or freelance, you've all now got a responsibility to make sure that you're compliant, and nobody wants that anxiety. So we take care of all of that business, represent you to IRD and ACC, so that you can focus on the thing that maybe is your passion, because a lot of these freelancers, that's their vocation, that's their calling, that's really what they want to do. They're in it for the love of doing it.
And I'm thinking of a lot of people that might really want to do something, but they don't do that something because they can't figure out how to do it effectively and efficiently. But these tech these tech
That's
startups
right.
that are kind of springing up out of everywhere
Yeah.
will now bring income and some sort of mechanism to actually reach a customer that they wouldn't have reached otherwise.
That's right. It kind of lowers barriers to entry to getting
that's
in
right.
there, so that you've got people who, would never have thought of selling things online, for instance.
Yes,
You look
yeah.
at those great tech platforms that allow you to spin up websites very quickly and,
That's
and
right.
spin up
Yeah.
an e-shop or whatever.
Yeah.
We have so many people every day who are basically, they've got a hobby business on the side, they're spinning up an e-shop, and they direct all of the income there at their Hnry account, and we take care of all the compliance for them. And
Right.
it's one of those things where previously, if you'd have thought of starting a side business, just the sheer admin volume that you would have had to deal with
turn you off.
probably would have just put you off. And
Right.
you were, I'm not going to earn enough from this to warrant X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, all of these tech platforms and this little ecosystem that's growing allows you to do that in a really simple, pay-as-you-go way. You can go and try things. Go and try having a side business. Whereas if it feels like a big undertaking, you're never going to go into it.
You're absolutely right. So how does it work? Take me through it. I've just had a baby. It might not look like it with this figure, but I've just had a baby.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I want to set up a business embroidering pillows. Sorry, this is all I've
It's
got.
amazing. This is great.
This is great, isn't it? So I'm setting this up, and I want to sell these really cool embroidered pillows to people all over the world.
Yep.
I don't know how much my income will be, but I'll be happy if I can just bring in maybe $100 a week.
Yep.
At the end of all this.
Yep.
How would it work? Talk me through it with Hnry. How could Hnry help me?
So from that perspective, I mean, first thing I would say to you is go and establish your online store, go and use one of those great websites. But what you do is you sign up for Hnry, and we give you your own personal Hnry bank account.
Okay.
And you use that to have all of your income paid into, whether this is your work doing embroidery for baby equipment, or whether it's you have another job as a photographer or whatever.
Okay.
And you direct all of your independent income into this one bank account. And as soon as any money comes in, we automatically calculate, deduct, and pay all of your taxes. ACC, income tax, GST, the lot, student loan, plus any deductions for KiwiSaver, etc., that you voluntarily want to put in.
Right.
And then we pay it onto your personal bank account.
What about expenses?
So any expenses, you just snap an expense receipt on your phone, and our team actually, because we're obviously tax agents, we review your expenses to make sure you get the right tax relief straight away.
Sure.
So that means that you can be compliant all the time. You get paid within, usually it's about 60 to 90 seconds. As soon as your clients pay you for that beautiful embroidery that you've done,
Thank you.
the money you get in your pocket is yours to go and do whatever you like with.
Right.
And we file all your tax returns for you. We represent you to those agencies. We even have invoicing software and various other personal financial management tools. It's we've been called self-employment in a box. Maybe I should call it independent earning in a box now.
Yeah,
Definitely. It's
Independent
got a great
earning,
ring
man.
to it.
We're forging ahead with this new term. Let's change the world with that term. But I guess, and going back to the expenses bit, so and you mentioned you take a picture of the invoice and blah blah blah.
Yep.
But if I'm just buying a whole bunch of threads, forgive me. If
You're
that's
really
not what
getting
it's
into
called.
this. You've thought about this a lot.
Really have. I've spent a lot of time, 9 months, thinking about this. It's been gestating within my psyche. So I'm buying a big amount, or I need to depreciate some sort of equipment that I've bought.
Yeah.
Does
So
it take care of all that sort of
let's
stuff?
imagine that you've bought something that needs depreciating. Yeah,
Like a sewing machine.
Like
right?
a sewing machine.
Sewing
Perfect.
machine.
Now you're doing it.
Now I'm
yeah.
really
So
getting into this.
you're going to do this one. Once this finishes,
That's
you're,
right.
you're going
That's
off to
right.
buy a sewing machine. So we work out all the depreciation on any assets you might have.
Okay.
And obviously that all gets taken into account straight away. So because of the fact that we're constantly adjusting your tax rate dynamically throughout the course of a financial year, that means that you don't get that point that I used to when I was a contractor, where you get to the end of the year and there's a big tax bill to pay, or there's provisional tax, or you're unsure of what. Whereas with Hnry, there is no provisional tax. There is no uncertainty about what the end of year holds, because you've been logging your expenses throughout the year. You know they're valid. There's no shoebox full of receipts anymore.
Right.
You're actually just always up to date. So if you happen to, let's say, I mean, it won't happen, but let's say your business did not take off, and you did 9 months worth of work, and then for 3 months
embroidered pillows though. Like, come on, James.
I know
Everybody's got to have one.
They sell themselves. But
They
imagine
do.
that didn't work. The worst thing would be to have to pay for 12 months worth of a service where you only used 9. And for us, that's why we love the pay-as-you-go model. We charge a 1% fee on your income, and that's it. You get everything for that price, which is all of your taxes filed, payments made, access to our team. And if you only work 9 months, you only pay 9 months.
So say that again. So if it's 1% of my turnover,
so you're selling a pillow for $100, let's say. I mean,
that's a good idea. Okay.
Then it's 1% plus GST is all our charges, and that is literally for everything taken care of.
Is it capped at all?
It is capped, actually. It's a very good point.
Yeah,
I forget to say that sometimes. It's capped. If you sell so many of these that you earn over $200,000 a year, then
which is very probable,
which is very likely worldwide, then the fee is capped at $2,000. So you'll never pay more than that.
If I was using an accountant and I was earning $200,000 a year, I would be paying more than $2,000.
You might be, yeah. I mean, we've heard some horror stories because the price of accountancy. It's this funny thing that accountants are this kind of unknown amorphous blob because they represent, I mean, that's hundreds of thousands of people are accountants, and they're all going to potentially do different levels of service and charge you different amounts. We've heard people get charged as little as $500 a year. We've heard people get charged $5,000 a year for basically what is the same service. And from their perspective, what they do is calculations and filings. And so what Hnry does is say, well, look, if we'll take a 1% cut on the income, but for that, we do probably about 4 times what the accountant does for you. We do all the payments, we do invoicing and credit control, we give you smart tools to manage your finances, we connect you to a community of partners, just part of the service. It's
going to be hugely disruptive then, isn't it?
Yes.
To the existing players that are effectively reactive calculators and filers.
Yeah, and even
no
those
disrespect
people,
to the accountants.
No, I mean, I think accountants have said, quite frankly to us, they don't want to do individuals' tax returns.
No, they want to do advice more.
They want to do advice. They want to do the grey areas.
Do you have children?
I do. I have 2.
And have you missed out letters in their name as well? Because there's no H in Hnry. Have you noticed that, James?
It's actually the E that's missing.
Oh, the E. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine. No, we didn't miss out any letters in the children's names. Actually, we kind of we originally got the name through. We really wanted the name of a person, and we didn't really mind what kind of name it was, but we kind of needed a name that represented the sort of attitude that we had, the reliability, and the fact that we were sort of friendly and efficient. And we actually put it out to a bunch of the startup community in Wellington. We said, what is the name of a person that is, modest and friendly but funny and relaxed and all of the things that we embodied? And someone came back and they said, oh, that sounds like my friend Hnry. And then someone else came up and said, actually, I've got a friend Hnry like that. Really cool to know. Lovely person. Horn-rimmed glasses.
So it doesn't stand for anything, does it?
No, it's just
a dude.
I tell you what, domain names on the internet are expensive. So, if you drop a vowel, then it suddenly becomes a lot cheaper.
Why is the old tax accountant come through? So take me through what it would look like for a more complex business then. So, I'm thinking of, for example, my business, right? There's multiple income streams. There's different GST will apply to some income and not to others. There's different ownership entities and all that sort of stuff. So how would Hnry actually work for somebody that's a bit more complicated, or maybe there's rental properties and a trust and stuff like that?
So things like rental properties, things like GST, or even trading overseas, multiple sources of income, receiving overseas payments, all of that is all part of our service. The only thing we don't do is we don't pay and file taxes for registered businesses. So I'm assuming you might be trading as a registered business, right?
Correct.
And in that case, if you've got a registered business and you've got the trappings of a registered business and you need sort of, payroll and stock and those things, there are some great accountants and software tools that can help you with that. So our service is very much for your independent sole trader, regardless if that person has rental properties or overseas income or multiple sources of income, whether they do Uber and YouTube income and freelancing and a permanent job, that's absolutely fine as long as you're an individual.
So your target market could just be mom and dad, they own 2 investment properties, and dad also does a little bit of karaoke singing on the weekends and emceeing, and he might get 10 grand a year.
Yeah, so all the way from there up to your kind of program project managers, people working in government. I mean, it's the breadth of the number of people. I mean, I didn't know when we first started how many people were self-employed in New Zealand, but you look at the whole film and TV industry, courier drivers, taxi drivers, barbers, they are all earning independent income.
Correct.
And not one of them considers themselves a small business. And then none of them are registered as businesses because that's pointless. So, these are all the people that are more in need of help than perhaps someone who is actually running a trading organization that has staff and payroll and inventory and things.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about financial exclusion. We've talked a little bit about how Hnry works and how it could work how it could assist business owners in investing more and getting rid of some of the administrative headache. What are some of the things that we see going forward? I know, again, we're talking about the future. The future's already here. But what are you excited about when you look at the next, say, 10 to 15 years?
I mean, for me, this is where I get really excited because it's a mindset that we're seeing a lot of individuals coming out of education who don't want to spend the rest of their lives working in one job or in one skill. And what we're seeing is people's careers becoming a bit more of like a portfolio.
Yeah.
You know, we all know how that investment portfolio works, that you kind of spread across a number of different opportunities, and as those opportunities become more or less profitable, you do more or less with them. So we're seeing people who are becoming what we call T-shaped in their career, which is they have maybe one specialism and then a breadth across the top of different things they can do. Maybe their major skill is graphic design, but they also do some web development work. They might do some Uber driving or carpentry.
Right.
And you imagine that as a T-shape, and you say as demand for those skills increases or decreases, they will dial up and down the degree to which they do those bits of work. And so what that becomes is this idea of portfolioism as a career, being portfolio careers, where individuals are in control of what they do, not because they happen to work at a single company and they've got a job which is graphic designer and what you do there is graphic design, but actually they have the flexibility of saying, based on market shifts, I'm spreading my skills across a broad range of opportunities, and I have the control over where I actually spend my time.
That's awesome. I think that's really cool.
It's a great concept, and we're seeing so much more of it in New Zealand, particularly with the sort of attitude that Kiwis have in terms of, you know, everyone just has a go,
Correct.
which I think is fantastic, and it really lends itself well to people starting to diversify their careers away from these silos of permanent employment. And so for me, the next 10 to 15 years gets really exciting as to how we as an economy can take advantage of and really get the most out of a portfolio economy, which starts to get really, really cool when you think about the way that New Zealand has led the charge on the world stage in a number of different areas. We're so well placed for showing the rest of the world how this stuff could work.
Well, productivity is going to go through the roof for those who are in the workforce or willing and able to actually work. This is going to just dial up productivity immensely. Right?
Totally, it's going to be huge. I mean, one of the great examples we had recently was one or two of our customers who are down in, say, Dunedin, Invercargill, and they've got jobs, technology jobs, but for Silicon Valley companies, and they do that from Dunedin. And you say, actually, we are, as a nation, incredibly well respected on the world stage for innovation and for the capability of the workforce here. And as soon as we start to hook into the rest of the world, and everyone has that idea of portfolioism and that idea of kind of taking advantage of those opportunities, suddenly you've got this whole workforce in New Zealand that is then able to be mobile, that is able to go and, you know, really take that out to the world and be seen as a world leader there. So that's where I get really excited, is where we start to think about actually changing mindsets around how you earn, how you work, and that balance with work and home life, which I think is so important when it comes to, you know, ensuring a stable future for ourselves. Is actually, I mean, so we employ freelancers, as you know, as you'd expect with our company. We believe in that line of work, and our graphic designer, she's amazing. She works probably about 30 hours a week, but she chooses her hours. She takes the kids to school in the morning, she picks them up in the afternoon, she works from home, and she probably works across about 4 or 5 clients at once on retainers. Some of them are New Zealand based, some of them are based in the UK, some of them are in the US, but she's in control of when she works and how she works. And her primary thing is that she wants to be able to pick the kids up and drop them off at school and spend that time with them, make the dinner, do that thing. But she's also in the workforce, and freelancing gives her the opportunity to do that, and she won't ever go for a permanent job because it will deny her that flexibility of the kids have got an event at school that she wants to go to. You know, having to ask someone if she can go, that's not how she wants to work.
And this is where it's kind of really aligned with one of the core values of what this podcast is about, is that it's about growing wealth. But a lot of people define wealth as the monetary bit.
Yes,
and
exactly.
So let's earn more, spend less, invest the rest.
Yeah.
But really, the wealth is much more holistic. You know, it's about family. It's about quality of life.
It's about lifestyle
freedom.
wealth. It's about,
Everything.
And again, it's one of those reasons we started Hnry, is that when people have a choice of how they spend their time. And we know that, you know, doing taxes is something that very few people will choose to do. I have a friend who likes doing his taxes. I think he's a sociopath. I'm sorry,
Probably
Gareth.
is.
If you're listening,
He
Gareth, I'm
probably
sorry.
is.
He enjoys doing them and looks forward to it every year.
Oh,
but
he definitely is then.
No, 99% of people don't want to do this because if they had a choice, they would spend time with family at the weekends. They're not going to work at the weekends. They want to take that time to enjoy time with family, to relax. And, you know, the more that we can kind of unshackle people from having to do these obligations, the more that they can actually spend the time doing the things they genuinely want to do.
Yeah. So this truly is redefining what work means as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we like to say that the 9 to 5 is dead. It's quite extreme, but really it truly is. You look at how most businesses run. You look at people who are adopting a 4-day work week. You look at people who are, they're into flexible working, which can just mean that you're working a set number of hours, but flexibly. 9 to 5 is not a concept that will exist in 10 to 15 years' time. And, we're already seeing people in even the most traditional businesses are already starting to shift more towards what will keep employees happy and what will keep people, comfortable and healthy in their jobs and wealthy from a lifestyle perspective. And what that is flexibility.
And it's kind of a natural impulse that we all have. Like, I want to do this podcast. I want to go to work for a bit, but I also want to spend time with my family. And then I wouldn't mind going to the beach every now and then too.
Yeah.
As time goes on, technology seems to be enabling more of us to be able to do what we actually really want to do.
Yeah.
So arguably our happiness goes up, or actually I would look at that as our wealth is increasing, not just from the monetary aspect, but freedom to do what you want. More connectedness with other people. I'm thinking also, though, back in my head, I wonder if millennials are probably a little bit easier to sort of get this, right? Like they probably get this way quicker, right?
Yeah.
They want to be their own boss. They want to be involved in something that actually makes a difference out there. They don't want to just do it for the money. Would that be
Definitely.
a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. We see that so much where people are valuing the purpose of what they're doing versus the just purely about the money, the financial gain. And purpose can just be more about kind of unlocking opportunities for themselves and just trying things.
Yes.
So I think there's a younger generation that is really taking this by the horns. And I think, like you're saying around technology, there's a real excitement there that actually, and I'll give you an example. I was the other day, it was a gorgeous day down in Wellington. One of those.
It always is.
It can't be Wellington on a good day, but it was a gorgeous day. So we just told everyone to go home. We let the whole office go, and we said, look, it's too nice to be cooped up in work. And myself and my wife, we picked up the kids early from school, and we just went down to the beach. And so we were down there at Scorching Bay, and it was lovely. It was so amazing. And as I was sitting there, I got an email from one of our customers, and for us, customer is key. That's the main thing. Customers come first. But they just asked a really simple question. Now, if I wasn't in this technological world where I could have answered them then and there, that customer might have gone away thinking we didn't care. But as it was, I could answer that customer. I could give them the information they needed right there from the beach. It was 20 seconds of my time. And then I went back to playing with my family. And that's where, for me, technology has become this enabler. It's this opportunity to be outside of your place of work, but still able to deliver a certain level of value. And I love the opportunity that provides for all of us, that we can be flexible with our staff, we can be flexible with our customers, because our customers don't work 9 to 5. They're all freelancers.
That's
and
right. They already get that.
They get that. So for us, it's about being on demand as much as they are.
Yeah. So again, looking at the next 10 to 15 years. What would be the best idea that you could give away right now on this show to somebody in this area trying to actually leverage off of this trend for the independent earner?
The biggest thing that I would recommend that people do is
embroider pillows.
Damn it! You stole the words straight out of my mouth.
We got time to
We got time. Okay. No, I mean, I think it's making a start, right? It's about forming those small habits, and whether that's a small habit to be better at investing your time and your efforts into things. But if you are someone who is a little bit wary about what the future of work, let's use that and say what that means for you, it doesn't take much to just have a think about where you might be able to add to your portfolio of skills. Okay. What's a second string you can add to your bow? And potentially, what's a way that you could go out and start experimenting with earning some money from it, potentially, or offering services there? Because all it takes is just kind of diversifying a little bit to really get yourself to a position where you can take advantage of portfolio careers in the future.
Right.
And there'll be a lot of people that will say, well, I only do one thing. I've been, doing this thing the same way. But actually, when you speak to people and you really delve into what they actually do for a job, I bet most people are probably doing about 3 jobs at a time. Whatever their job title says, they're probably doing like half of someone else's work at the same time.
Yeah.
But use that to your advantage and start adopting more of an open mindset to this idea of portfolio careers, because then you diversify and then you get that wider kind of degree of wealth.
There's a lot of wisdom in that. I like that, because I think if I was looking at, I'm in a big organization and I'm looking at actually getting ahead, I've got to have a good idea, got to get a team around me, and I'm just going to launch a startup. That's I guess that's kind of old school thinking, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not actually about that, because what is it about that you're trying to achieve? You're trying to achieve some independence, some freedom. You're trying to grow your income. You're trying to grow your skill set and be involved in something that you're into. You don't need to necessarily have that awesome next idea.
No, it all starts from personal pain. That's how ours started, and it started with me at my dining room table with a couple of spreadsheets like 3-4 years ago with this idea that I just wanted to save myself some time.
Right.
And that's where Hnry started, was really about, I've got a personal annoyance, a personal grievance that I want to solve for myself so that I can have more time with my family. And it was only when I started doing it and people said, I could really do with that, and can I use that thing? And that's where it kind of explodes from there. So I always sort of, when people talk to me about like, how did this business grow? And you say, well, it was an annoyance that became a hobby, that became a passion, that became a business, and is now a bit of an obsession, because we know that we're helping people, and the kind of feedback we get from our customers is, where have you been all my life? The fact that I had that problem myself and resonates with me, the kind of degree of pain relief we're providing for people.
Sure.
Like, I didn't start out and say, we're going to have this amazing startup.
Right,
it was
you were just solving a problem.
I've got this annoying problem that I'm going to try and solve.
And once you've solved it, that was cool. How can I help other people?
And
solve
now
the
I
same
sit there
problem?
and I go, we've got this amazing business that's going global, and it's things are off the charts at the moment.
So tell me about where business is going. How is it off the charts? When is Xero going to buy you guys? Tell me everything.
Well, I'd said earlier, I've not met Rod yet, but but maybe that's something I can speak about. I mean, look, we for us, it's we're just really excited. The kind of growth that we've seen, particularly in the last 12 months, we've seen, I think, something like 20 times over customer growth. It's just it's insane how quickly this is being picked up, particularly at this time of year where people are thinking more about tax and getting.
You've raised capital privately before, right? And
last year. Yeah.
Last year. What's the next entry point to anybody else who wants to get in on some of the action?
Probably, I would say later this year, maybe sort of August time. I think that's kind of on the cards at the moment. Really, for us, it's about, it's funny, when we first went out for investment originally, everyone says that you've got to choose investors carefully. And at the time, you sort of say, oh, well, we'll just kind of take any money that's going. But I genuinely believe it's about finding the right investors. And we did. We were very selective with the investors that we brought on last year. They were people, we actually had a bit of a criteria where we said they must be someone who is either in the gig economy, or is in some sort of business that deals with the gig economy, or they're in financial services. So we have people, we love hearing from people who are in this economy who are genuinely keen to help grow businesses that foster independent earning. So if people are interested in getting involved, then they can either drop me an email, james@hnry.co.nz, that's HNRY.co.nz. With no E.
Yeah, but an H.
But an H, or just jump online to hnry.co.nz, and we to be honest, we're just happy to speak to everyone. We're just such a sociable bunch.
Yeah, good on you. All right, well, before we finish up, is there any other words of wisdom that you want to impart to our listeners, or anything else that you want to talk about?
Well, look, for me, the big growth market is in embroidery. I hear, Darcy's got a good business going there, but I worry about disruptors in your market. So
really?
Maybe there's some smart tech you can employ to do your embroidery. We'll see.
Okay, well, yeah, I was just thinking of going on Fiverr. Finding,
it's a good place. Or Etsy, I don't know whether you can use Etsy from over here, but if it's, you can sell some boutique embroidery on Etsy, maybe you can make some millions from
All right,
that.
I've got a future. I got a future in pillows. Well, thank you very much, James. James Fuller from hnry.co.nz.
.co.nz.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks,
and
Darcy.
until then, catch you next time around.
Thanks.
Cheers.